So we move on now to our last speaker. And I'm really looking forward to this talk as well, such variety. And it's from Bartek Guentzel, who is a nature educator from Poland and is the owner of the company in English, Path to the Forest. I'm not going to try and say it in Polish.
Try.
You could tell me. Drogado Lasu.
Perfect.
Oh, of course. He specializes in working outdoors with children with the goal of building healthy relationships between them, between children and nature. He's the author of many educational initiatives and projects. And on the basis of his experiences, he co-runs the annual Nature Education Animation course, which sounds fascinating. His talk is entitled, "Why Are We Afraid of Nature?" Over to you, Greco. Sorry, Bartek. I'm a step behind myself. Over to you, Bartek.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you so much, EOE Network, for inviting me. It is a great honor for me to participate in this webinar, especially because I'm taking part in it with such excellent guests. My presentation will be much simpler than Gregor's because my achievements are more modest than those of my wonderful colleagues here. But I will try my best. There are many ways to encourage children to come into close contact with nature, but sometimes, despite efforts, I observe a mental block expressed in fear. Forest, which for me is a friendly place that delights with its beauty, smells, and sounds, for someone it can be a place associated with many dangers. What influences it? What kind of fears do we feel towards nature? And is there really anything to be afraid of? I would like to discuss the most common concerns about contact with nature on the basis of a simple experiment. Like you said, I'm a nature educator. I professionally build relationships between children and adults with the world of nature. In my childhood, contact with nature did not exist as a commodity or service. It was enough to go out in the yard, to hide in bushes, climb a tree, or wade in a stream. Nobody needed a guide or an educator to be in nature. Today, progressing urbanization, pollution, and a whole lot of unjustified fears have separated us from the natural world with a thick wall. A world where we need guides who will give us a sense of security. But security against what? I don't think the forest in the 1980s was any safer than it is today. Broken glass, stray dogs, poachers, desperate and dangerous people, and remnants of the war, all this could be found in the Polish forest of the transformation period, much more often than today. But after the last school bell, cars from my block stuffed with pots, tents, and food disappeared in the forest for weeks. So why did we start to be afraid of the forest from which we came out? And during our lifetime, a friendly place for tens of thousands of years become an extreme experience for many, going beyond comfort. In my home area, there were many places in the surrounding forests where dances, games, and religious ceremonies were held, often a few kilometers from the nearest buildings. Today, there is no trace of forest squares, just as there is no need for entire communities to spend time together in the forest. What happened? Why we have moved away from nature in such a short time? In the case of post-Soviet countries like Poland, access to new media is probably largely responsible, but the tendency to fear nature seems to be a global problem. Next slide, please. What are these fears? To find out, I did a small inquiry asking my friends on Facebook to answer two simple questions. What are you afraid of in the forest, and what are you afraid of in the city? I asked simple associations, first thoughts. The second question or thought is, it differs from the topic of my research, shows an interesting relationship. Over 80 people participated in the survey. Naturalists and ecologists are a large group of people I have studied, and it was likely that their answers would slightly twist the picture. But something completely different happened. According to the instructions, the respondents focused on their primary fears, often reaching the childhood. Naturalists who spend and ecologists who spend a lot of time in the forest, knowing well this environment both during the day and night, should not have fears associated with it, don't you think? More than 40 different answers were given to the question about fears related to the forest. And the 10 most frequently mentioned are losing orientation and getting lost, people with bad intentions you meet in the forest, ticks, darkness, boars, hunters, snakes and vipers, spiders and bugs, wolves, and other wild animals. In the case of the question about the city, the number of situations causing anxiety was much smaller. Another slide, please. Thank you. And the most frequently mentioned 10 were cars, accidents, irresponsible drivers, people with bad intentions, aggression in very different manifestations like alcohol, rudeness, drugs, institutional violence, smog, fear for a child, theft, excess of stimuli, crowd, noise, and rape. What came to my mind after analyzing the material is a clear division into unavoidable, impossible to prevent, and imaginary threats, or those from which we are able to protect ourselves. In the first group, out of 10 cases are situations that we can avoid, prepare for them, or are simply the result of a lack of knowledge or a disordered image of situation. The second group, on the other hand, contained 100% unavoidable situations, the kind against which we are not able to protect ourselves when leaving home. Next slide, please. Thank you. I'll venture to conclude that most of our fears and concerns about the forest are a matter of our imagination and the lack of knowledge. Let's focus on the imagination for a moment. The forest is a place with a very limited visibility, in which it is hard to locate the sound source, the perfect place for our imagination. You hear something, but you don't know where it is and how it looks. I spend a lot of time in the woods with the kids, and I see their reactions during the evening bonfires when a strange noise is heard nearby. In preschool and older children, cultural conditions created by fairy tales, parents' reactions, or scaring children with wolves and monsters appear and grow with age. What about younger children who do not yet have this cultural contamination? Their brains are the treasury of our history, manifested in atavisms and primal fears. Little children are not afraid of spiders until someone in their presence starts to panic seeing a spider or on the wall, and a brave dad does not flatten the poor spider with a slipper. It is different with the wolves. I will tell you my story, very short. I remember well the moment by night fire. I've always wanted to meet wolves. I dream about them. I tracked them. I found droppings and hunting spots, but never managed to meet a wolf face to face. It seemed to me that this day would be filled with excitement and indescribable joy. That night, a few hundred meters from me, I heard a live howling. The night was cold and damp, making the howl sound perfectly. The wolf's voice was so piercing that I got goosebumps all over my body and poured cold sweat. What happened to me was the purest atavism that I inherited from my ancestors. After a few seconds, joy came. In order to have a closer look at this phenomenon, I went to my son's kindergarten. I asked the management for permission to emit 8 sounds made by animals, such as, another slide please. Thank you. Animals such as European fire-bellied toad. I hope you know this small, beautiful animal. Cuckoo, woodpecker, the drumming sound. Red deer, roe deer, wolf, and tawny owl, and the cricket. In the group of 3-year-olds, the sound of the wolf made the greatest impression. In body language and verbal messages, I clearly read the fear that I did not notice, for example, when emitting the sound of red deers on the rat. For me, it is much more scary than the wolf sound. In the group of 5 and 6 years, the anxiety reactions was caused by toads, roe deer, red deer, wolves, and tawny owl. Look, what a big difference between those children. The atavism is justified only in the response to the sound of the wolf. All the rest of fears are, in my opinion, culturally conditioned reactions. Another slide, please. Thank you. Conclusions from this observation, which are also a message for parents and educators. The older we get, the more fears our environment instills in us. By exposing our attitude towards the natural world, we unintentionally build a relationship between our children and this world. That's all. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Bartek, thank you so much. Very thought-provoking again. And I wonder if you could start by telling us a little more about how you go about addressing these fears. Do you try and get in early so that they become, young people become accustomed to these sounds before they become fearful of them? Or do you work with these animals, the sounds, or maybe some of these animals on your list were not making noises like the spiders and the snakes? Do you try and get them curious before they are fearful, or do you try and address their fears later on? How do you do that? Fascinated to know.
Oh, it depends on many things. I do not have intention to put somebody in a situation with the animal, with the sound or anything that is scary for him. So when I walk through the forest with a group of children and I see some reactions like stress against something, I try to look. I will tell you on maybe for example with ants. I go through the forest and see a big nest of ants, and I look at children. I want to talk about the ants. They are fascinating animals, but I see the reactions, the body language of the children, and some of them turn around. Some of them take few steps back. And I see that there's something going on, something's wrong here, you know, somebody's afraid of those ants. So I never make a pressure on somebody to come on, you have to, they are safe, don't worry, you will love it. No, I never do this. I know it doesn't work. So I try to give a lot of information that shows that this animal is not only safe, but it's very helpful for us. It's necessary to have ants. And in the end, sometimes I take a chance and give a small ant to a finger of a child, you know, and it happens. There are also phobias that I'm not able to fight with. This is something for psychiatrists and psychologists, so I don't touch it. I'm not a therapist. But there are many ways to build this relationship and to fight with those fears, because I think that fighting with those fears, we build a really deep relation with world of nature. We can meet it and we can love it and we can protect it in the future.
And that's an interesting aspect because of why this seems to me to be valuable work, that the outcome of shifting the relationship to one of fear to one of maybe curiosity or at least awareness in a different way, that would you would see as a purpose that then
yes,
engages people with nature in a constructive rather than in a destructive way.
Yes, I see this lack of knowledge especially in children in school, which turns to violence against nature sometimes. You know, if you're afraid of something, you're fighting with it or running away from it. So this is a really important thing to me as an ecologist also, to protect the world of nature by making those children friends of the nature. You know?
And that's a great place for us to draw a close, because I think all three presentations have had that at their heart. How do we build back those relationships with nature in ways that we can enjoy, but also care for nature and help to restore, and for it to be restored and for it to flourish, and for us and it to flourish together, which is coming through as a message from all three of you. But Bartek, again, a big round of silent applause is coming your way. Thanks so much for taking us into a really interesting, unexpected topic. I really enjoyed that. And thank you again to all of our speakers. We may well go on to hold future webinars, and there will be a survey coming your way, which I hope you'll complete to help us to make a good job of that if we go ahead. And of course, our next conference, which is postponed from this year, will be on the theme of children and nature in Marburg on the 20th to the 24th of October next autumn.